अब पत्नी का देहांत हो गया, तो दोनों में ऐसे नेचुरली रोक जोक होता था, कभी प्रेम से कभी गुस्से से ऐसा होता था। तो पत्नी कभी कभी गुस्से हो जाती थी, बोलती थी, गरजती थी। तो जब उसका देहांत हो गया तो फ्यूनरल के बाद सब घर जा रहे थे बेटे के साथ। तो इसमें बादल गरजा और बिजली हुई, बाद में बारिश आई। तो वो पिता ने बेटे को बोला, अब तेरी मम्मी पहुंच गई, मैं जान गया। वो ऐसे ही थी, गरजती थी, बरसती थी ऐसी। तो बोलते कि अभी मेरे को पता चल गया, वो पहुंच गई। उसका मैसेज आ गया। ये है यू कांट बीट द ज्यूज। A few years ago, Joseph, he was a Jew, was finally given an exit permit by the Russians and allowed to immigrate to Israel to join his family. He was told that he could only take what he could pack into one suitcase. At the Moscow airport, he was stopped by an enormous custom officer who glared at him and snapped, "Open the case." Joseph opened the case, and the Russian looked through the meagre belongings and pulled out a large bundle wrapped in old copies of Pravda. He unwrapped it to reveal a bust of Stalin. "What is that?" sneered the custom officer. So Joseph said, "What is that?" He said timidly, "You shouldn't ask what is that. You should ask who is that." "That is our glorious leader, Stalin. I am taking it to my new home to remind me of all the wonderful things that he did and the marvelous life that I am leaving behind. I always knew that you Jews were mad," the officer said, tossing the bust into the case and says, "Go." A few hours later, Joseph arrived at Ben Gurion Airport and was confronted by an Israeli customs officer. "Shalom, welcome to Israel. Open the case." Once again, Joseph's belongings were examined and the customs officer came upon the bust. "What is that?" said the customs officer. "What is that?" he said. "You shouldn't ask what is that. You should ask who is that. That is the bastard Stalin. I am taking it to my new home to remind me of all the misery and suffering that he caused me for most of my life. I want to spit on it every day for the rest of my life. I always knew that you Russians were mad," said the officer. And he says, he tossed the bust into the bag and says, "Go." So he let him go. At last, Joseph arrived in his new home and eventually got around to unpacking, watched by his young nephew. He took out his few clothes, and then carefully unwrapped the bust of Stalin and put it on a table. "Who is that?" asked his nephew. "Who is that?" said Joseph with a smile, big smile. "You shouldn't ask who is that. You should ask what is that. That is 5 kilos of gold and just a bit of black shoe polish. That's it." But he brought 5 kilos of gold in a statue of Stalin. Thank you.